Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. My name's Amanda. I'm autistic. I have ADHD and a couple other neurodivergencies, so make sure you check out my channel for the playlist to see all of what I talk about. And back there is Milo, my son's service dog. He's chilling in the office with me, and you may or may not hear Watson down below me snoring. That boy's got some snores on him. So last Monday, I went to a book club meeting for the first time. And it's interesting because a lot of times people think of YouTubers as being extremely outgoing and like, oh, we can just talk to anybody. But there's a lot of YouTubers who are actually introverted. Now, I don't consider myself introverted. I do feel like I'm a very extroverted person, but I still get a lot of social anxiety, especially with going to new places, new events, and talking to new people.
Interjecting here to say, before my diagnosis, I used to think of myself as a shy extrovert. It all makes so much more sense now.
Anytime you insert yourself into a new group, I think the majority of people, neurotypical or autistic, are going to have, I don't know, maybe it is easy for some people, but I think for some people, when there's an established group and you join it, there could be some anxiety. I mean, I just feel like that's common. And then just amplify that for autistic ADHD people. I really wanted to go. I think it's important to keep working on trying to find new friends. As a autistic woman, I have lost a lot of friendships over my lifetime due to miscommunications. When I wasn't diagnosed autistic, I didn't have an awareness around certain things that would happen in friendships. And I've talked about this in older videos, but often I would be called, too pushy or too clingy and certain words like that. And people would end up ghosting me. And I was left with not understanding what I did wrong in the friendship. Now, since being diagnosed autistic and kind of knowing what to look more for in friends, because that's another thing. I was so starved for attention and so starved for wanting friends in my life. If basically anybody just kind of glanced over at me, they were like my friend. Like, oh, yes, they paid attention to me. They are my friend. And I wasn't picky or choosy in who I gave my energy to. I think a friendship needs to have equal amounts of work put into it. And oftentimes I would be with people that I put in all the work or effort in because the friendship meant more to me than it did to them. So I'm going to show you some footage that I took in my car before I went in, kind of showing some of the nervous energy that I had. I'm going to insert that. Check out my here. Playlist. Oh, I'm a little nervous today. I'm doing a social thing. Oh my gosh. So I have been wanting to go to this book club, the local book club, for many months. I've been on their email list and I've been getting their emails, and I always like, okay, this month I'm going to do it. And then I either ADHD kicks in and I literally forget to just like put things in practice that would make me actually show up, or autism, social anxiety kicks in and I'm just like, I can't even deal with it tonight. But I like to lead by example, and I'm always telling my kids to like try new things and, put themselves out there, because my kids and we both want to make more friends. And one of the ways to do that is to join local clubs of an interest. One of the reasons why, a book club is very hard for me is, one, I have PDA profile of autism, which is pathological demand avoidance. And basically, if anybody recommends or suggests I read a book, it is perceived as a demand on my system, and I immediately can't read that book. And I have to work through it really hard to make myself read it. It was very difficult in school. A second thing is because of the memory disorder, I have a memory disorder called SDAM, severely deficient autobiographical memory, plus ADHD, which has a hard working memory. I love to read, but I very much read in the moment, and it's very hard for me to remember details about a book that I read enough to share them with somebody. So this book club is kind of unique in the fact that they don't assign books. You just come bring with your book that you're currently reading and share it with the group. So that sounds really interesting, exciting, because no one's telling me what to read. I think it'll be good, but I'm here. So I'm about to go in, and I'm sure everyone is going to be just lovely and pleasant. But I am nervous. So it'll be what it is, right? I'm not having expectations. I'm not like, oh, I'm gonna meet my best friend here tonight. It's just getting out and being with people. And one of the big things, though, is that this is really the first time that I've joined this type of social group since after my autism diagnosis. And now that I'm aware of my mask, I'm a lot different than I was before. Used to, when I would go into these kinds of situations, my masked persona would take over, and I wasn't aware of my mask, and I would be this like super bubbly person, but it wasn't real, and it was very exhausting. And I don't know who I am in social gatherings anymore, because this is new territory. So wish me luck, and I will report back later. So the meeting was 2 hours. It went really well. I'm going to show you kind of a recap. Again, when I got back out to my car, I filmed like another minute or so. So I'm going to show you that. And then now that I've had time to process, I'm going to kind of tell you some of the things that in the last week I've had time to reflect on about this first going to this club. 2 hours later, and I made it through the book club. It was actually really good. The people in it were all very lovely. I'm trying to think how many. I was very nervous. I can't visualize, so trying to count people when I can't. 1, 2. I'm trying to think of who spoke. 1, 2, 7, 8, 9. I think there was 9 people at the meeting. And we just kind of went round robin around the table and talked about whatever current book we were reading. And everyone was just so warm and friendly. And I'll definitely go back. It was good. I'm very glad I did this. I'm gonna process, so a lot of y'all know, I have a delayed processing. So I'll have a lot more to say probably on it tomorrow. All right. So it's really interesting because my biggest question is going in unmasked, or was I masked? And here's what I mean by that. So I'm working on unmasking my autism. That means that I want to enter groups and just be my authentic self. I don't want to have to worry about presenting in a way where I'm worried about whether or not other people are going to like me. I'm not going to change who I need to be in order for someone else to like me. So I sat down, and the group was getting started right away. I got there just as it started, which a lot of times I like to be early to things, but I'm sitting out there and filming in my car. I took up my get here early kind of energy. But anyway, so I sat down, and surprisingly, there was actually somebody that I already knew at the book club. So I had met her a long time ago. And so having a familiar face, even though I didn't really know her, we just ran together in homeschool groups before. That was really comforting. Just, something about that familiarity of oh my gosh, I know this person and she is a good person. That means the rest of the group must be good, right? Our brains kind of think that way sometimes. So I sit down, And like I mentioned, the style of this book club is everybody go around the table and share some of the latest books that they've read. And before, if I had gone in as a masked person before my diagnosis, and I say all of this with a grain of salt because I have a memory disorder. So now that it's been like 8 months since my diagnosis, I'm already kind of forgetting who I was before. Weird thing with my memory disorder, I get to live in the present, but it also is hard to reflect on the past. But I do know that when I would go into situations like this, I became the center of attention. It was a way for me to control the room. If I, hi Milo, hi Milo, if I made it all about me, then if it was it's a way of control. Now, some autistic people are not like this. They just wallflower to the background, and that's a valid presentation also. But I would go in full of like ADHD, nervous, chaotic energy. And before, I'm pretty sure as people were sharing, if I had a thought about something that they said, I would have interjected. I would have been like the loud person in the group, completely unaware of my behavior or the fact that nobody else was doing this. Like, that isn't something I would have picked up on. Anyway, just as it happened, because I sat down next to the organizer and we went around, I happened to be the last person to share my book, which actually I think was kind of good for me because it gave me time to just sit with my energy. I did have my fidget. So the reason why I'm like, was I masked? Was I not masked? Because I had to suppress my urge to interject. And that is mass behavior because my natural inclination would be to interject and talk over people because of my ADHD. But I knew it wasn't appropriate for this situation. And I did want to hear what other people had to say. It's I am not saying I have answers here, guys. I am learning out loud with you. I'm trying to process this because I want to go in unmasked, but I also don't want to go in and just be rude because I do now have an awareness of my old behavior, if that makes sense. And so instead of blurting out answers and blurting and interjecting, I focused that energy into a fidget. I brought a fidget with me and I sat there and oh boy, was I fidgeting because it was like I wanted to say something. I probably should have taken some notes too. I think that would have helped me because, like, instead of saying it out loud, I could have taken a note, but I wasn't quite feeling comfortable to do that. Other people were taking notes, but I was really nervous and I thought about it, but that didn't feel comfortable, so I didn't. And then when it got around to me, I started off by actually saying I was autistic because, ironically enough, one of the first persons who shared brought up autism in a kind of side way. And then the next person who shared mentioned that she had a friend who had two autistic sons who homeschooled, and I homeschooled my kids. So I was like, hey, this is just kind of interesting because I'm autistic and y'all were talking about that. And so it was like I kind of got the things that I wanted to interject. I said at the beginning of my turn because it was like that was part of my unmasking. It was like I know it wasn't about my book, but it was like I needed to say these things. And just being transparent about my autism, it just felt really amazing. And then And then I was kind of nervous about what was the appropriate length to share. Because of having ADHD and time blindness, I can talk for like 15 minutes and it only feels like 3 minutes has elapsed for me. And so since I didn't have any kind of external timer, so like when I'm filming these videos, I've got a little timer up there that's told me how much time has elapsed. And I have to keep track of that because otherwise I have no mental clock in my brain that tells me how long I've shared. And since I don't read body cues very well, like I wouldn't be able to tell if people were getting bored of listening to me, for instance. Um, I was just really struggling with like how much time of the on the floor is it my turn to talk. So I tried to keep it shorter than I normally would have, and I think I did okay. And yeah, there was like a lot of overthinking, and I think it'll get easier with time, but it's like it almost felt masked in a different way. But I did feel more regulated and I felt more comfortable. And I think that is, the end goal. I didn't have this like I keep saying chaos, nervous energy. And afterwards, I didn't feel as depleted as I normally would after an event. So I think I was on the right track. Um, and with time and doing these things, they say practice makes perfect. There was one lady there that I kind of feel like after I disclosed my autism, her attitude towards me changed to that kind of like thing that it's really subtle, but people will infantilize autistic people. And even people like I've known in my entire life, once I've told them I'm autistic, it's like all of a sudden, like they see me different. And you kind of this condescending, like, oh, you're doing such a good job. You shared in a really good way. And it's like things that you don't think that they would have said otherwise. But it was subtle. And I don't know, maybe I was being sensitive to it. Time will tell. Like I said, I felt very welcomed by the entire group. I can't wait to go back. Um, okay, and then my brain's already skipping ahead. So I do want to drive home the fact that this is why autism is a disability. Undiagnosed autism was going to events like this caused so much stress and anxiety and overstimulation. I mean, it's a book club, but because of all the things in the background that are running through our heads, it just causes so much deregulation of our nervous system that it takes time to regulate afterwards. And even after a diagnosis, you can see there's just so much. There's no, for a allistic person, when they are in a situation like this, even if they were a little anxious to like join a new group, they fall back and rely on their old patterns, their old behaviors. There's just a certain being that they have that they know how to integrate themselves into groups without the anxiety continuing on. But for an autistic ADHD person, it's like just analyzing everything all the time, constantly. And it is exhausting to our brains. And that's why our nervous systems just get very overregulated. I mean, oversensitive. I can't talk. That's why our nervous systems get overstimulated so easy. So if you're a neurotypical person and you're watching this and you're like, oh my gosh, get over it. It's just a book club. Like, why are you carrying on? Why do you have a however long video talking about this? Because it's so incredibly important for neurotypical people to understand the levels of stress and anxiety that just going to a book club can cause for somebody with autism. It is normal for us, and yet most of us will mask through it. And you, as a neurotypical allistic friend, may not understand the level of stress that your autistic person is going through just to be with other people, to socialize. Because while a lot of autistic people are introverted, I highly doubt as many are actually as introverted as they say they are. I think it's because we have been deflated over and over and over and exhausted over and over and over by social events that many of us just give up and quit trying. I hope to not get to that point, but I understand it and I feel it. And some days, like, it's just like, oh my God, it would be easier just to not have friends. But that isn't the life that I want to lead. I feel as humans, connection is important. And so I'm going to keep putting myself out there. It's not easy. Okay. And with that, I'm going to wrap up this video and I'll see y'all on the next one.